Welcome back to another episode of Talk to My Agent. I'm Max Lowenthal, your host, Director of Product Management here at Decagon. Excited to have Andi joining us on the show today. Andi, a veteran of several different industries. I think we were discussing before we started. Maybe best to let you do an intro. Would you love to give a quick overview of yourself for the audience?
Thanks, Max. I appreciate it. So first of all, I'm thrilled to be here with you. So my backbone, as I tell people, is in technology, and I've traversed 5 different industries from automotive, technology, biotechnology, energy utility, professional services, and then in my board life, I've done consumer healthcare, real estate services, automotive safety suppliers, as well as risk management companies. So had a lot of varied experiences with technology as a backbone. And what I really pride myself on is helping companies through different venues, whether it's governance or hands-on operational roles, to really be able to adopt great tech, digital transformation, and artificial intelligence capabilities to promote their agendas and achieve their goals. So that's kind of my background.
Yeah, well, listen, I'd love to talk about it. There's such a broad range of scope there. And of course, there's a particular focus on AI for a lot of businesses that I think are pretty thoughtful about the technology they adopt, especially I think about manufacturing, biotech. There are huge implications. When you're working with a lot of these organizations, are there any consistent traits that you're seeing around businesses that are excited about adopting AI? Like, who are the forward thinkers? Like, what are they doing kind of across all the different spaces you've worked in?
Yeah, so I think there isn't one industry or one company that isn't thinking about AI, adoption of it, how they promote and win on the top line, which is their revenue generation, bottom line through cost savings, efficiency, improved experiences for employees, et cetera. The one big common thread I'm finding, in addition to some of those, is customer experience. Industries have realized that customer experience is going to ultimately win the day. And if we look at the multiple industries I've worked in, retail, I think, is the one that is absolutely the strongest relative to that customer centricity, frictionless, always on, personalization, and how do we win? And so when one sector does so much better than any other, they set the bar for all the others. So as I think about, my buying experience on Amazon, or my buying experience on Starbucks, or sorry, I'm naming companies here, Max, but, I think about my buying experiences, right? And then I go and I have, a healthcare engagement. And I think to myself, why am I filling out HIPAA forms 3 times every time I go to a different doctor? Why do my medical history? Sure. My gosh, if I've written my medical history once, I've written it 20 times. Why do I need to do that? Yeah. So people are becoming less and less tolerant of not great experiences. And right now, the retail experience is sort of leading the way. Financial services is following. Some health and entertainment are following. But you've got some laggards. Healthcare hasn't sussed out that when I go to my pharmacist and I go to my lab and I go to my doctor and I go to my specialist, I want to be able to take with me the common things and not have to fill them out again. So all industries are thinking about, how do we get to a great customer experience? How do we augment top line and bottom line? But there's just some laggards that aren't achieving it. And so the good news is, as I just said, all industries, I think, are thinking about it. The downside is they're either not approaching it correctly or aggressively enough. And I think the consumer is going to win the day because the impatience is going to get much higher.
No, I mean, totally makes sense. As someone who is married to a doctor who is an avid listener of the show, I think she would probably attest to a similar story to what you're sharing. What is it about those industries? Is it like a cultural comfort with disruption? Do you think they'll get there? What's it going to take? Because we're seeing something very similar in the market on our side as well. There are a handful of spaces that I think are comfortable and willing to get there, and then others that I think are just now starting to arrive to maybe the conclusion that this is something that's worth working with.
So great question, Max. I think it's a number of things, and which one weighs more in any given industry or company is probably different to others. There is a cultural, it's an unknown, right? So when people hear things like, AI, ML, large language models, the fact that we're training, chatbots and robots and things like that, or Gen AI, they're overwhelmed. So
Yeah.
one of the things, and I think you guys here at Decagon do a fantastic job, is to bring it down and really educate and train, and people understand what this means. That's the cultural aspect of it. That's sort of the intimidation factor. But then there's also some very hardcore financial issues, right? Where you've got a lot of installed technical debt that is in these companies. And while you can bring in an agentic AI platform and you can use it as a forcing function to really get value almost immediately, I would say the long-term broader value has to be when we, legacy companies take the install base and fix the structure of a lot of these ERP and big monolithic systems that are holding them back. So companies shouldn't stop and say, I have to upgrade first. I have to clean my data first. I have to do all these things. Because we know agentic AI companies like Decagon come in with great orchestration layers, great APIs, MCP interfaces, if you will, to be able to work with these. But it's a 1-2 punch. You have to also upgrade these things. So that factor is a second and very, very real factor that is sort of holding some of these companies back. So there's a little bit of culture and understanding. There's a little bit of the install base and what you need to do. There's a little bit of having the right people and the right capabilities and the talent, right? This is a different skill set to what we were hiring 30 years ago when I started in IT, where I needed people that, could program in Pascal and C and understand critical thinking and subroutines, right? This is a very different skill set and a very different mindset that requires critical thinking. And a lot of imagination and a lot of capability. But here's the thing, the companies and the industries that I just spoke about all have the same tools at their disposal. So that is sort of a leveling play field, and they can come in and they can use and leverage, but they have to train the people, change their culture, and really understand their install base. So those are the three big reasons that I think companies are laggards. More so than others.
No, it makes a ton of sense, right? I mean, I even think about the team that we've built here for Agic product management. This is a skill set for deployed AI, sort of like builds that I think didn't exist, and still to this day I think is like a role that I think is in definition. Tech and sort of like tech stack is one thing. Developing talent is not like a simple task, like evaluating, changing organizational structure. In the leaders that you've worked with, right, I think it's one thing to tell them, hey, we need to bring your organizations into a world where they're comfortable with AI. But if I'm a leader who's starting to think through what that means, like very tactically, what coaching points and tips are you giving to these types of folks?
So first of all, intellectual curiosity, making sure that you get a set of people in that have intellectual curiosity and the leaders that require that, understanding the latest technology, I'll call it tech stack for lack of a better word, understanding the different tools, techniques, capabilities, and company offerings that are out there, finding trusted advisors out in the industry. Again, I would say like Decagon. I know you guys are a product platform. You have a but you're also great educators on what can be done through agentic AI for these companies to win with their customers and to win top and bottom line. AI fluency is critical. Critical thinking, I mentioned that before. A lot of companies are unprepared. If we take a look at the percentage of companies that are actually realizing value, you're in the single digits from AI and implementation. Yeah. And I know I'm not going to win a lot of friends and family here, but Copilot is not AI. Okay, I mean, it's good. It's a cool thing. It's a good thing. Like we should have Copilots, but that's not where the big bang for the buck is going to be.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I think about hiring folks on our team here, it's very much an evaluation of what you talked about. It's that mental flexibility. because you really can be placed in any type of organization and need to navigate and understand the nuances of their business. I think like that is something that a lot of businesses undervalue, is having just like true mastery of your existing infrastructure is almost table stakes for a lot of these folks. You can actually even spot the opportunities in the first place, right? And saying to yourself, oh, I have a solid understanding of technology, but where can it best be applied? Sure, there are use cases that make sense, but in the businesses we've been partnering with for the longest, they've worked and they've created great customer experiences, and now they're looking elsewhere across the rest of their business to say, how do I build an AI concierge experience, not just in customer support or experience or in otherwise,
That's right. That's exactly right. And Max, it takes the leadership at the top of the house of these companies to really be bold and really try and put the investment in people and technology and be future built firms, right? Whether it's people saying it overtly, I've had CEOs say this, whether they say it overtly or whether they just think it when they're mouthing the right words, we've always done it this way is what I hear, right? Hey, we've always done it this way, it's worked, etc. I've had some experiences recently that have just like driven me crazy relative to, how can you not look at the experience of your customer base and realize and not think about you have to be a future built firm? I had a bank, I'm going to give you a little story. You can edit it out if you need to, Max, but a bank, my 85-year-old mother needed to do her taxes. She needed a 1099 form, right? I log into the portal to get it and it doesn't work. We no longer have an online identity. Oh, why don't we have an online identity? Call the bank. Oh, because you closed your account. I know I closed my account, but I still have a 1099 because I had the account last year. So, well, we'll mail it to you. Yeah, but I'm in this state and my mother's in that state and I'm trying. And it was like, are we really having this conversation in a world of I can order, try on, return all in minutes or days? I mean, it's just incredible. And so CEOs, boards, management teams need to actually pull themselves out of there. This is the way we've always done it, and start looking at what kind of experiences are B2C, and by the way, our B2B customers experiencing in other parts of their lives, and how does that translate when they come deal with us? And the biggest realization that these companies need to also be aware of is the fact that the price of change is much low. The price of, I don't need to go to this bank anymore. I don't need to shop here anymore. I don't need to buy my CPG products at that retailer anymore, right? Is very simple, especially in the digital world. And I think that's super important as we think about, to your question, the skills that are needed.
So I put my hospital system CEO, just sort of like more traditional business leader hat on here. And I say to myself, great, I want to make forward progress, but there's risk, especially in the healthcare system, especially in manufacturing. There is just so much risk in changing the status quo. We are naturally risk averse as people, right? We want to maintain, especially when the stakes are high and you're building multinational, like world-changing organizations. And so if I'm a leader in a position where I'm saying, hey, I understand that you want me to do this, but you're also asking me to introduce so much risk into the process in the way that I've done things previously that can really disrupt my business, how do you hedge for that, right? How do you make sure that you're making smart, like sort of tactical risks?
So if you open any 10K, the annual report of any public company, one of the biggest segments in that report is risks and what we're doing to mitigate risks. So why do we all of a sudden go sort of brain dead? I'll just say that, right? When we have a technology that's introducing a risk. Figure out the risk mitigation strategy, determine how much risk you're willing to take and or what you need to mitigate it. And because risk aversion, complete risk aversion of digitalization and adopting a technology that's so pervasive at this point is a strategy for I won't be around very long. I'm being a little cutesy here, but the reality is you need to do risk management. And so I wouldn't, whenever we prioritize initiatives in any of these big organizations, and I'm sure you guys do it, Jesse does it, Decagon, it's, is something worth the risk or the residual risk if we can mitigate it, and start small or start where you're willing to take on that risk. So cost and risk are the two big reasons I often hear for why we're not adopting. But guess what? Ask yourselves, what's the risk of not turning into a digitally transformed AI company, right? Or the use of AI in order to be able to achieve goals and objectives.
Yeah, the way that I think about it is exactly to your point that risk to some degree is like an effective spectrum in how much of it are you willing to accept, right? It is not necessarily this sort of like too much risk or yes risk, no risk. It's almost to say, hey, we recognize the value of this structure. And up until what point are we okay accepting this? What's so, I think, difficult in a lot of organizations I've spoken to is there's no precedent. There's no rules for defining what AI native risk looks like. And so more often than not, to your point, a lot of businesses, the first time they're engaging, at least with my team, is the first time they're trying to figure out what is agentic AI in the first place and how do we even measure this from like a risk measurement point of view? If you're a leader in that perspective, is your advice to like go conservative and doing what you're most comfortable with? If you're kind of writing the playbook as you run it, how do you write that playbook in a way that accepts risk but still makes progress? It's just a tough balance.
So again, what's the risk you're willing to take? Yep. How much, how fast, at what cost? That's what you have to ask yourself. But you also have to take the corollary, which is, if I don't do this now, what's the risk that I'm going to be disintermediated? What's the risk that my competition is going to move faster than? And so you have to make a very informed decision. How much, how fast, at what pace kind of thing, and at what cost? And what if it doesn't happen, right? What if I don't take it? Because that's a risk as well. And so, I think I'm making it sound very basic, but you really do need to distill it down to those kind of basics. And we do that every time a company thinks about a merger and acquisition, a divestiture, capital allocation, a change in the strategy, a change in the chief executive officer, change in the management team. All those things have a measured risk, but you have to weigh it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious if there are lessons. One of the other things that I often advise folks, right, is just to look around the industry and see what other folks are doing, especially forward-thinking businesses, right? More often than not, that's why we're happy to connect folks we work with one another, just to share best practices at sort of like a basic level. Are there industries outside of retail, or maybe even within retail, that you see really pushing the ball forward in a way? Like these are the archetypical places that business leaders should be looking to, or use cases that people are exploring that you feel like is kind of paving the way for a lot of this stuff?
Yeah, so I think financial services is pushing very hard, right? Despite my bank example a minute ago, I think financial services is pushing very, very hard. I think hospitality industry is pushing very hard. Again, customer experience. The industries that are focusing on customer and being customer centric, I think, are the ones that are leading. And the ones that are learning from them, where they learn from, personalization, agentic automation, and things like that, are the ones that are actually going to be fast followers and move ahead. I talked a little bit about healthcare, but let me touch on manufacturing, right? So big manufacturing operations. I spent 21 years in the auto industry, and now I sit on the board of a number one safety supplier for the automotive industry. We have big manufacturing operations. Some of the things that we know, right, that agentic AI can help with and can really help drive are things like preventative maintenance. So we have the manuals on all the equipment that we buy, whether it's robots or presses or stampers or whatnot. We have preventative maintenance on those. We also know how much we've used them, because you know the takt time and how much you've used your equipment. You can marry those two things together and have an agentic AI agent that actually calls out and says, schedule a maintenance call for this piece of equipment at this time because it's ready and it's due. That's pretty standard. Just like an Amazon calls out and says, hey, we've noticed Andi Karaboutis hasn't bought her coconut oil in, a few weeks. It's time to prompt her for the coconut oil thing, right? Or see if she wants a subscription. There's so many parallels from one industry to the other for doing this, that imagination and that sort of push just has to happen.
Yeah, and what we're seeing, financial services is a great example. It's a place we've been spending a lot of time, as well as healthcare. What we're seeing is the folks that look to other industries and borrow these best practices, right? They're looking at the retail, the technology, a lot of these other spaces that are doing that, and they're saying, hey, what does that look like in an applied sense in my business? They're actually getting out the gate much faster, right? Because the reality is it'll never be exactly the same, but you kind of just need to get a sketch in your head of what value can this derive for me? And that's enough to set your teams as a leader, I think, down the path of really starting to make a meaningful difference.
That's exactly right. And Max, that's why it's so important for leaders not to be, well, we've been fine, we've been doing it this way, or that's a different industry, right? I mean, those are such trite statements. I don't even want to repeat them here. Oh, they're different. That's a different industry. But that's where you spark and you get sort of the, what can I learn from that and what can I do? I used to look, I mean, Fidelity, the platform Fidelity, I had a area called Full View, where I used to be able to, you could put your credit card, you put everything, including your health information, I think your Fitbit information or Apple Watch information, et cetera. It was so interesting. And from that thing, I was able to take a look at something that we were looking at utilities and said, why can't I do this whole life cycle on the health of, the electricity usage of a customer that wants it? So you learn. I mean, that's probably a pretty lame example, but that's the kind of stuff that we think about. And then couple that with understanding latest and greatest into technology and what it can do for you. And you've got a trifecta that will help you actually, disintermediate yourself.
So let's say I'm a leader. I've taken a look around the industry. I have a good understanding of what applied AI can do for me. I've hired the right talent. I sort of mitigated the risk, so to speak. I've got all the steps ready to go. I know what I'm going to do. How am I best empowering my team to drive change within the organization? What are you advising folks? What type of working model? What type of leadership practices? I'm bought in, right? Like, what do I do from here within my business?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, this is my recipe for it. First of all, start with the forest and move down to photosynthesis. Don't start with photosynthesis. Now you can do some pilots, you can find some great, but when we say we've now found the right talent, the right people, we know we're going to be AI led. We're going to try to enhance our top line in such a way and our bottom line in such a way and our customer centricity in such a way. Be very clear what those are and set KPIs and goals for measuring, are we achieving it? Empower the teams, train the teams, and give the teams the outcome that's needed and let them go after it and deliver it. Sign up with great partners. I know, I'm a bit of a Decagon junkie, right? Because I think you guys have done some tremendous
Me too.
But then find great partners and great platforms to achieve it. Always focus on ROI. Doesn't matter what we're doing. It's got to be a return on investment. And return on investment doesn't mean just the dollars. It means the customer centricity and the outcome of customer experience that will translate into dollars. And let the teams go, but have regular check marks, right? Mm-hmm. Have regular, are we achieving the KPIs? Are we achieving what we need to do? And are we achieving it within the risk tolerance of what we want to do? Because once again, it's not just a budget. It's not just a safety. It's not just a regulatory. It's all of that together and the risk tolerance in which we want to do it. But recognize that you have to be bold and you have to go drive and allow the teams to drive in contemporary fashion.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And this is most of the conversation that I think my team is having here with a lot of the folks we work with, right? It's a conversation around you understand in general what you want to build, but the two biggest risks that I see when we're actually bringing these to market is one, unclear ROI. The reality is if as a business and either partnering with Decagon or collaborating with us in the early days, you don't have a clear understanding of what it takes for this to be successful, it's almost not worth us starting to build out this project in earnest and investing heavily in the resources until we're all on the same page, because we're effectively skating towards a finish line that doesn't exist, or in the worst case is entirely off base of where I think we ever want to go, right? You never want to be in a situation where you're building an AI deployment. I think there was a statistic one of the major consulting firms released, like 95% of these deployments don't end up driving ROI positive. My hypothesis is actually not that the teams aren't smart enough to develop and implement, but they probably don't know what and why they're supposed to be doing what they're doing before they start at all. Right? And so that's where I spend most of my time recently with a lot of our partners is just saying, hey, you want to build this, right? Hertz Rental Car is a partner of ours. You want to extend a rental. why? Like, where's the value in doing that? And what, Hertz has a fantastic executive team, so I think they actually have a pretty clear line of sight to where the value is in doing that. But a lot of the conversations that we're having, especially early on in our engagements, are around value as a concept and what it really means.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love the fact that you're, as a product offering company, you guys talk about ROI, because ROI over hype has got to be so big in this space. Again, I'll go back to, you ask companies, even as a board member, what are we doing with AI? Well, we have Copilot here and we have our own chat GPT internally. Okay, well, that's cool. But what's the what are we doing to enhance our product, to enhance our top line, our bottom line, and customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction? Give me those metrics and what we're saying we're doing, and what you have. So it has to be ROI over hype.
Yeah, the way that I think about the evaluation framework that I'd love to get your take on is it's about performance, it's about product, and it's about partnership. And it's almost in that order, although I will say there's not necessarily like a large gap between these points. Performance in the fact that ultimately at the end of the day, if something doesn't work, the rest of it doesn't matter, right? Product in the sense that it is, if this is easy to use, if this is intuitive, if this is a piece that can become a core part of our tech stack, it's the right choice. And then partnership, I think transparently is simply, do I like working with these people, right? I think no one likes working with someone, even if they're driving transformative impact, if they're not the nicest folks in the world. And so at least when we're thinking about talent on our side and when the way we approach most of our partnerships, I call it the 3 Ps. My team is so tired of hearing me say this, but it feels like it's kind of the right way to think about it. Maybe there's a fourth one I'm missing.
Great way to think about it. Max, let me take that from you. I like that.
Yeah, please do. I think my team is tired of hearing me say it. So if we get more folks out in the world evangelizing, we'll make some progress. So let's say I'm a CEO, a CIO, and I want to start modernizing with AI, right? Like I'm coming to you and I just want to get started. Where are like the first principles and kind of like the pitfalls that I should start with, right? Just like really simplify it. I know we've talked about this quite a bit, but if I'm a leader and I'm chatting with you, what should I learn?
So look, this is age old. What are the problems we're trying to solve? What is the challenge that we have? Or where do we see the future going that isn't part of it doesn't look like we're going to be able to fulfill it strategically, right?
Yeah.
So, there's an old adage, if you ask people, this was a Henry Ford thing. If you Henry Ford asked his customers, what they wanted. I'm sure you've heard this, Max, right? That people would say, we need faster horses. Okay, well, find out where you need faster horses, but find out where we think our strategy won't be fulfilled in the right time, in the right way, et cetera, and start laying those things out. Lay out your problems. We don't have the right customer experience. If Hertz has 20 times better customer experience than one of the other big firms, then guess what? My changing over to Hertz is going to be so easy because, even if it's a few bucks difference, like when I get that text that says you didn't return the car 3 weeks ago, what? Seriously? You think I didn't return the car? So find those painful friction journeys. Find the big things around strategy where you don't believe without some help, you're going to achieve your strategy. And then put those pain points. And if you want to start small, you can start small, but don't just go get a bunch of AI tools to say we're doing AI. Prioritize, give an ROI, set a team to it, measure the KPIs, and go deliver. It's as plain as day. It's like, seriously, it's like building a house. You know what you need, you know your budget, you know the design, you know where you want to build, you know what you want. So go and start doing that. Or you have a house and you have problems with it and you want to fix it up. I know I'm sounding very pedantic and tactical, but literally it's like that. And when you realize that AI tools can help, agentic in particular AI, when you have a legacy install base, but you've got workflows that can be modernized, or you've got journeys that can be done, go find a great agentic company in your vertical or in the space that you're looking for and start working and see and measure the value and where it comes out as you develop that bigger grandiose forest to photosynthesis plan for how you're going to adjust, the entire install base to get it. So, Max, it's pretty basic, but great CEOs, great management teams think in those terms. And in some case, it's starting small of an overhaul And in other cases, it's starting something new on the side that might usurp and replace the core. And in other cases, it's a sequential step of what we need to do to get there. And that's the approach part of it, to achieve top line, bottom line, customer sat, employee sat, and all the metrics that you want.
Folks often love to hear like the stories from your experience. Is there a technological transformation experience that you've had in your career or in working with a business that you can point back to as just being transformative, maybe as a good analogy to the moment we're in with AI? People love to hear the experiences.
So I think there was one experience back when I was in the automotive industry, and it wasn't necessarily AI, but it was cutting edge at the time, where we embarked on a transformation having not thought through what the real outcome was. Every organization in the company had its own definition of success. The CFO had one set of success, the head of HR had another, et cetera. And so when we embarked on that, no technology on the planet was going to help us achieve and win at all of that. And so it was a significant write-off. It was a significant write-off, on the financial books of the company. And when we go back, as good companies do, and did a postmortem and took a look at it, there was never consistently agreed outcomes. There was just too many outcomes. And the platform that we were using, the partner that we were using, had a little bit of vaporware as opposed to real, true core capabilities that we needed. On the flip side of that, I would say, there's been other examples, primarily, I think in more recent times, where we would partner with, in the utility industry, we partnered with a great partner to try to achieve some outcomes for our customers in order for them to have faster experience when we sent our people out to do repairs. And we were able to take work orders that went from 70 days on electrical repairs down to 3, because we were able to track from when the work order opened to when it closed. We were able to track and know exactly the transparency, the throughput, where we were sending our line workers to go do the repair, et cetera. And so it was a great story, but great technology partner, great alignment, functions that all came together to really have the same outcomes, and consistent and constant measuring of the interim steps and the outcomes that we were getting to. And so we knew we were tracking. It wasn't a December surprise to see we got to the end of the year. Did we achieve what we needed to achieve?
That's awesome. Yeah, the clarity of thought is just so important. Where are we going? How do we get there? If you feel like there's even any ambiguity, there probably is even more than you're realizing, right?
That's right. It's clearly thought and alignment.
Well, listen, that was all the questions that I had. Really appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us. And hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
My pleasure. Thanks, Max. Appreciate it.